Good afternoon. Very good afternoon to all the participants who are participating in this webinar. And I would like to welcome for all of you for this inaugurating webinar of EDB. We are going to have this hopefully each week, coming weeks. And so today's topic is the global brand dominance. As we all are, we have come across a period where we have some time to rethink, and also we can rethink about what we have been doing and what we should be doing and things like that. So we got a bit of a break, so that I think this is a good topic for the existing and upcoming export businesses and whatever the businesses. So we thought it is a timely topic. And also today we have a very fitting personality to do justice to this topic. Mr. Dilhan Fernando, the CEO of the Dilmah Tea. So as you know, the Dilmah for lovers of tea is a top global tea brand. It's due to their quality and their finest product. So according to some of the marketing websites, that it says the Dilmah has reached to the top brand in the tea producers of the world. So I would like to give a little bit of an introduction to Mr. Dilhan Fernando, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Dilmah Tea. He's also the Director of Dilmah School of Tea and Dilmah Conservation. He's also the Chairman of the Biodiversity Sri Lanka. It is a pioneering environmental collaboration amongst the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, IUCN, and the Dilmah Conservation. So before going to the webinar in proper, I would like to remind you the end of the presentation, or even during the presentation, you are welcome to send any questions or comments. Dilhan will take a few questions after his presentation. So I think I should not take any more time. So without further ado, now I will invite Mr. Dilhan Fernando to take us through his presentation. So Dilhan, over to you.
Thank you, Saman. Good afternoon, everyone. Global brand dominance is a little bit of a stretch of the imagination here, but let us initiate hopefully a conversation that will help each of you at this very difficult time. And I can tell you that for us, as a company which is considered to be established over 30 odd years, one of the key reasons why today is a good time for this conversation is that the consumer is fundamentally different. After every crisis, invariably you find a significant evolution of the consumer in whichever direction. In this case, it's a very clear direction. But also in every situation like this, you have an opportunity to reimagine brands and businesses and the way businesses operate. So as for the content, I have prepared some points for us to discuss based on our experience. It's going to raise a lot of questions because in 30, 40 minutes of discussion, it's very difficult to cover something that is so wide-ranging as this. But I hope you will keep any questions that you have in mind, because one of the key points that we need to remember as we go into this is that we are at possibly the most challenging time in the history of not only Sri Lanka, but of the world. But equally, we are also at a time when we have an opportunity like we have never before seen. never before seen. So I'm hoping that some of the thoughts that I share now will be helpful to you, because they're based on our experience, and there's a little bit of an introduction, but please note down and share any comments as someone mentioned. So let me start with the presentation. I hope you can all see that. Right. Someone, you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I put down 3 reasons for branding. You know, quite often branding is considered some sort of fantastic achievement that is great without really understanding why it is an achievement at all. I want to frame it slightly differently here, because in the current environment, we are seeing challenges all around us. To come to office alone is a challenge today, as I'm sure all of you know. But branding, to put it in the current context, is as much about survival as it is about the benefits that are conventionally associated with branding, value, etc. So the first and most critical point that I want to share now is survival. And for one reason, you have the world that is currently undergoing unprecedented economic, social, natural, that is environmental stress. Everybody is going to be in your marketplace, in our marketplace. And therefore, branding, building the uniqueness that we can offer and building a channel to communicate with the consumer is more important now than ever. It's difficult, but hopefully I'll share with you some thoughts in the coming slides that will help you a little bit more in understanding how you can brand. It's also a solution. Looking around us, as Sri Lanka, we are an island. We have relatively high cost of labor. We have high cost of energy. We have high cost right around. So there are 2 options. One is you can say, yes, look, we're in trouble. What do we do? Or 2, we can say, let's try to use a brand. Let's try to build an identity that will turn these apparent negatives and, of course, complications, such as high cost, in many cases, in the case of tea, history and geography also against us. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides. But branding is also a solution to a set of circumstances that might be challenging, because the brand can be designed to suit the resources. In fact, the brand must be designed to suit the resources, and in so it can help to, which is the final point, which is the obvious one in this preamble, which is about value creation. So it is value creation that helps us to address certain of the costs that I mentioned, but also to build sustainability. And why I talk about brand as survival is that today we have non-negotiable issues relating to the environment, relating to global warming, relating to inequality. Now, all of those are going to come back. They are still there. And post-COVID, we're not going to have any more relief from any of those issues than we did pre-COVID. But we're also going to have a consumer, a potential consumer for our brand, who is much more aware of each of these situations and therefore demonstrates a strong preference for brands that integrate those issues, which are also our issues, integrate those issues in the brand value. When you talk about capitalism, you have, of course, the economic value, the commercial value, etc. But it is okay. So just to finish the preamble, it's a question of the definition of value creation, because as we move into the post-COVID era, brands are going to be, consumers rather, are going to be demanding much more of brands. And in fact, I saw some data just coming out of the UK, where whilst even now, this was some research done last week, whilst even now the awareness and the demand for sustainability environmentally and addressing issues, social issues like inequality is very high, where consumers consider that it is something that is non-negotiable, 71% of those same consumers believe that it is the job of brands to be fulfilling that, not themselves. And so it's something that's going to be very necessary. So this slide, logic, I think for everyone, but being an EDB seminar, I thought I'll show it. You can see why from a national perspective, we need to be addressing the issue of brands. Brands create, they drive value. You can see what has happened in the case of brands in fundamental changes. But as a value driver, there's at a global level, you're looking at around 40% of value in FMCG created by branded product. Of course, there's a lot of unbranded, but the rate of growth at around 20% is what is critical. I mean, you can see an opportunity in that because, as an example, Tesla, relatively a new company, now officially the fastest growing brand in the world with an increase of 65% to $12.4 billion. And so the opportunity within brands is something that is also fundamentally changed. So I mentioned how today we have a greater opportunity than before. 10 years ago, you had in Fortune 500, the Global 500, you had in national brands a pretty static representation of large brands. So of course you had, 20 years ago, the IBMs, the Hewlett-Packards, and so on. But this volatility in brand value signifies the opportunity that we have. Let's look a little bit more at that opportunity. Now, I talked about cost and how a brand can be used to leverage, to possibly to harness and address problems of cost and a brand as a solution. This is a classic situation. The top blue line is tea in Sri Lanka. The rest of it is tea around the world. And so, of course, the blue line was created as a result of a brand, Ceylon Tea, that was created many years ago, which has significantly changed in its fortunes in terms of promotion and so on. But today, we have a situation in Sri Lanka, high wages, high cost of production related to the fact that our industry is 152 years old and therefore you have depleted soils. But how does a brand unlock the value in this? Well, consumers are asking for sustainability. We are a sustainable industry. We have greater biodiversity than most. Consumers are asking for ethics. We are an ethical industry. It's not perfect, but we pay the highest wages amongst any tea producing country. And so these are, of course, I'm compressing everything in the interest of time. But with these, you have the possibility to engage with the consumer and build brand value around a problem, converting a problem into something that could be seen as positive. Now, this is not the way to do it. And I'm showing this partly as self-criticism because here you have cost of production at the bottom. You have removed the names of the entities involved, but you have a multitude of brands that are trying to hover around cost of production, offering the cheapest possible product. You have one or two that are really genuinely adding value, but that green line, I'm not saying who it is, but that green line is actually where all the brands should be, because in order to turn this possible negative into a positive, we need to all align our brands with genuine value creation. And why I'm showing this is that branding can take several forms. It is interpreted as anything that is packed. So in the case of tea, in the case of coffee, and so on. But what is packed for a private label brand is absolutely not considered to be what true value creation in the branding sense is concerned with. It doesn't mean that you need to overnight move away from whatever practices. If you are an exporter and you are exporting something in bulk, whether it is vegetables or tea or coffee, that's how my father started. And it's the most practical way to cut your teeth on this process. But the point about it is, start with 1%, move on to 2%, start with a local brand, move on to a regional brand. Even global domination starts with a single step, like all journeys. So I'm sharing this for one reason, in the sense that a brand's value and the brand's design must be aligned with its resources. In this case, yes, we have a high-cost industry, but it's a Sri Lankan industry, and as a Sri Lankan brand, we have an obligation to make sure that we have aligned our brand with the asset that we have. We cannot we cannot disconnect, for example, with plantations, because if for a brand to be truly sustainable, it must embrace the resources and the conditions in which it operates, and therefore it must be designed accordingly. Cheap is a strategy that really devalues everything that branding is about. I know that the whole world is focusing, at least as far as retail is concerned, as far as the buyer is concerned, is aligned with cheap, simply because of EDLP, everyday low price, and the discount culture that prevails in the market. But that is a race to the bottom. And as you can see from the recent announcement by one of the world's largest tea brands, from Lipton, there's no more money in it. But these are brands that have been guilty of fueling this discount culture, which has created a situation where brands no longer represent the value. Brands must be able to unlock the value, must be able to align with the resources to be truly sustainable. So a 21st century brand in this way also is fundamentally different to what a brand was in the 20th century. Now, here's one example. This is some data I pulled out of Euromonitor today. Asian brands, Asian consumers, it's a consumer survey. And so it goes beyond the retailer. You're not going to get this from the retailer. You're not going to get this from a hospitality operator, but you will get this from a consumer. Over 40% of consumers in two very large markets, China and Indonesia, seek higher quality goods and services, especially concerned about food safety. Now, food safety is going to be on steroids after the current COVID situation. I mean, we never knew, we never understood about bacteria, viruses, and so on. So the sensitivity of the consumer to food safety is much greater than ever. What does Sri Lanka offer in this sense? We are relatively small. Yes, we have had a problem. We have not grown in line with our Asian neighbors, where our branding and our value addition are concerned, but we have a controllable asset. We have resources that value artisanship, that value, we have a strong infrastructure that is dictated by our past, where we have, of course, there's changes required to build a stronger national quality infrastructure, but we have the ingredients of food safety, because we have not fallen victim, particularly in the tea industry, to some of the temptations of other territories where they have moved simply on price. And so, of course, the others are cheaper than us, but the consumer says they're willing to pay 40% more. And for quality, we have quality. Safety, we have safety. There's a few other things that we have. So I hope it's reasonably clear as to why a brand. But maybe let me talk a little bit about what is a brand. And I think on this, I put these few points down, because I want to reinforce the difference between a brand that is simply a packaged item that doesn't have the attributes of a brand and a genuine brand. A real brand needs to be original, in the sense that what a brand does is it gives a product an identity. Whether you're producing French beans or whether you're producing cinnamon or tea, the difference between a branded product and the unbranded product is the promise that that brand, that visual offers. And therefore, it needs to be original, because it's a point of difference. There's no point in branding if there's no point of difference. If you take something pretty generic and you offer something equally generic, then you can be sure that you're not unlocking value and you're not harnessing the potential in a brand. A brand must be planned. Planned because of scale. You know, often people they come and talk to me about brands and they say, you know, we can never do what you guys have done and so on. But what really is, you know, it takes me back to our beginning. We started, as I said, as a bulk tea company. We then went on to supplying private label, but we never lost focus on the fact that we have to ultimately have our brand on the product. So each of these was always a stepping stone. They're necessary. They're evil, but they're necessary. And so this is why I'm encouraging you. Understand the scale of your vision, of your ambition. Design a brand that will be aligned with your resource base. So for example, taking the cinnamon industry, let's move away from tea for a while. Cinnamon industry in Sri Lanka, we have a high cost product, but it's a heck of a lot better than the cassia, that is the much cheaper substitute. So we plan not for global domination, but we plan to build a brand that is sustainable relative to the resource, relative to the scale of operation, relative to the artisanal manufacturing method. Our cinnamon is made by hand. That's huge. What does a consumer value today? They value artisanship. Handmaking, BMW, Mercedes talk about how their seats are handmade. It gives them the allure of a luxury brand. How much more luxurious is our Ceylon cinnamon, our cardamom, our clove? Not only are they hand-picked and handmade, but they're also in pristine natural environments in many cases. What about Sri Lankan cuisine, Sri Lankan hospitality, whether it is a homestay in Galle or whether it is a luxury boutique property in some other part of Sri Lanka? Those are the, that is the way in which I believe that a brand must be planned. And planning is critical because when you look to the specifics, the next point in a brand, we need to decide, okay, what are the channels we are going to go for? Are we going to go for retail? Are we going to go for specialty retail? Are we looking at hospitality? Are we looking beyond? It is absolutely critical that the scale, the resource base, and the channel are all aligned in the sense that, in our case, we know that, yes, to get into retail, it's going to cost a lot. Why? There are listing fees. There's a whole load of reasons why a retailer will find to take your money off you. And so maybe we start by building our brand in one cafe. Maybe we decide, hey, we're going to build our brand using a mobile cart, which we are going to station on Golf Green. It's still branding, and it's still value addition, and it's still an important first step, as long as you recognize it's a first of many steps. But it's a question of the plan. So if we are planning for cinnamon, perhaps not a mobile cart on Golf Green, but in the right environment, cinnamon, who would appreciate quality in cinnamon? Who would appreciate the wellness in cinnamon? A premium consumer plus chefs. So we engage with the hospitality channel. So building the channel emphasis and designing the brand from the origin, the point of difference, the uniqueness, resource base to the channel focus is absolutely critical. And then we come across to the point of engagement. Today, brands are different. 20 years ago, it was possible to have a brand that stood for one thing. And you say, you advertise, you tell customers, this is what we stand for. Today, it's that was, you can compare it with a monologue and a dialogue. So 20 years ago, we talked down to our customer. Today, it's a conversation, because whatever you say, the customer can come back in 10 minutes on Twitter, on whatever it is, whatever social media. And of course, not only that, they'll come on the phone, they'll come in different ways on the website and so on. And so it needs engagement. Engagement because whatever you have to say, however you design your brand, the consumer will be testing. If you say that it's the finest cinnamon, and if you don't have, and if you're importing cassia from China and shipping it, apart from the legal implications, it will be just a matter of a few weeks or months before this point is exposed, because somebody has gone and found some sort of report on the internet, or customs have caught you and it's on the internet. Everything is on the internet today. Everything is searchable. And so if there is any problem, and believe me, there are hundreds of consumer research agencies around the world that are testing, checking, verifying, and putting their information on the web. And so if there is a problem, you can be sure that it will be amplified. And so engagement is critical also because of the next point. The next point is trust. Trust is the most significant and important commodity in a brand. I think those of you who are branding are quite aware of that, but trust, it's like a pane of glass. It needs enormous effort to build it. But if the trust is broken by one inaccuracy, by one untruth, by one incident, you can never fix it. Yes, you can paste it, you can use the industrial glue or whatever it is, but it'll never be the same. So trust and perfect trust is absolutely critical. So I'm tying these up because once you have decided, okay, this is my brand, it's going to be Sri Lankan cinema, this is the name I'm going to give it, these are the things that I'm going to say about it, you need to make sure that you are consistent in that. And that is the next point, because a consumer will engage with your brand on Twitter, on the web, in a shop, in a cafe, in a restaurant, in so many different ways. And in every single touch point, if you're able to maintain the consistency, not only of the visual, of the taste, and all the different aspects of your brand, it means that you're strengthening the core. If that consistency is not there, it means the brand is fragmented, which means the identity is weak. And I'm telling you this because we've been through it. We've been through a point where, yes, we've had inconsistency in colors, inconsistency in logos, inconsistency in taglines. The consumer has very limited time. In retail, 3 seconds to look on shelf and decide on a product. In hospitality, well, they have even less because chefs are busy, and that's your customer in hospitality. F&B managers are busy and they don't give you a great deal of time. But it's also an opportunity because a recent report I was looking at showed that in retail, in grocery retail, approximately 40% of consumers, this was a report covering the US and Europe, take their purchasing decision while standing at the shelf, which is, it's unprecedented. And why it's a positive and why it is good is that means that you get a chance. Now, 10 years ago, I have had so much research that would say, look, your brand doesn't stand a chance because in this country, the consumer is so accustomed to the product that they're used to that they come and even without thinking, they pick the product off the shelf. But now the difference that you're seeing is that if you get your brand assets right, and if you present the brand correctly, consumer is going to give you a chance on shelf. And that's a big deal that is very new in the 21st century, where the consumer is going to look on shelf and say, okay, let me try this. Or, hey, I saw that on the menu in a cafe. And so you have a chance. So consistency across all consumer touch points is absolutely critical to build the core and strength of the brand. Sustainability, we'll talk about that in a minute. And of course, to be strategic. And to be strategic is to ensure that all of these elements are considered. And this is something that I found in Forbes magazine. 3 critically important elements of consumer trust. First, authenticity. Authenticity, not only in the brand, not only in the product, but also in terms of our communication. So do we claim ABC that is absolutely verifiable? Do we have, if we say that our product is good for human health, do we have a doctor backing up, or is it some unknown, non-credible internet source? And so all of these facts are important. History. Consumers value history and heritage simply because that means trust. It means that there is certain foundation and certain longevity to the brand. So the longer that a brand has been around, the more trust that you're likely to achieve. But that is also changing. And why there is more hope in the 21st century for a young brand, a new brand, is that you have a fundamental change in the complexion of the consumer. You have Gen Z that is entering and beginning to dominate, millennials and Gen Z dominating the grocery and FMCG. And what they are is open. They are very, they are resistant to tradition, often even rejecting what their parents liked. If there was a family brand 20 years ago, you knew that it would continue through the generations. Now, absolutely not. In fact, it's the opposite. Many of you experience that in your home. But proof, the third element that Forbes talks about, is the fact that on social media, anything that you say can be verified. And of course, you will have conflicts. You will have some people who come just to create trouble. You will have competitors who come and give you a little bit of a hard time. But the fact is that the way you handle all of these, if it is a consistent, sincere message, and if you have your evidence and all the other elements that we talked about earlier, the elements of trust, elements of sustainability, right, then you have the possibility of addressing even the worst social media attacks, because simply you're telling the truth and you're sincere. And so that stands for a lot. Okay, this picture here, we know in Sri Lanka, we have a fantastic operation in the garment industry, producing Victoria's Secret, and what they have achieved in terms of technology, etc., is phenomenal. Now, I'm bringing this example because this brand, Liability, is a similar brand which was set up in 2015. Now, Liability, it started out as a digital native, so which means they sold simply off their website. Last year, now they started in 2015, and it was set up by this lady Michelle Grant, and it was sold last year for $85 million. So Sri Lanka has the technology to build a Liability. In fact, we have all the infrastructure because we have multiple high-quality garment businesses that have established their expertise, that have the equipment, etc., in play to build a brand. They have everything except the brand. And so building a brand, in this case, it was 5 years that this brand, and without any significant infrastructure, simply, of course, the office and their website, built value of $85 million. So in the old days, that would have taken a long time. I don't know how long Victoria's Secret took for it to build its brand, but I'm guessing it's around 20 years. So the opportunity is there. Now, what about the brands that Sri Lanka already has? We have plenty. I mean, these are just a few. The bottom left brand, that's Barefoot. I put the picture up simply because I'm sure you would recognize what it is from the image. Then there's Tharu Villas. These are two ice cream brands. I Love Gelato, In Gelato, and so on. Soul Coffee, a relatively newer brand, but still doing wonderful things. Look at a brand like the Backyard hostels. Something new, something disruptive, and it's very Sri Lankan. So what this brand has done, what companies like English Tea Shop have done, competitor but respect, because they have done, as we talked about in the earlier slide, they have built originality. So who would have thought that a hostel concept could work in Sri Lanka? And I know I have visited one of their places. I think it was in Veligama. It's a luxurious hostel with relatively low overhead cost, but it's a fantastic concept. So at any point, it doesn't always have to be the luxurious. It can be a premium Barefoot concept or a premium mass premium brand like this. It could be something like English Tea Shop. It could be something like Shirohana, because there are opportunities in the niches. But what is happening today, I don't know how many of you have read the book Long Tail by the editor of Wired magazine. It's an incredible book, and exactly what he describes is what we see today. In the past, you had a large segment of reasonably homogeneous consumers. Today, you have a multitude of fragmented niches. The niches are getting bigger, but you have fragmented niches. You have people who are going to be coming and staying at Bankyard hospitals, but you also have people who are going to be staying at Jet Wings, at Hiltons, at Shangri-Las, at Cinnamon properties, and so on. and also at Tharo Villas. And so the point is, this creates an opportunity for us that is also unprecedented. You have niches that might comprise women travelers, that might comprise people who have just completed their university education and are taking 2-3 years off. I mean, you only need to walk down tall ramparts or walk in Weligama during the tourist season to really to realize how varied are the visitors, how diverse they are. And that is the point, to really understand that there is an opportunity beyond the mass. There is a conventional wisdom. Yes, a nice 5-star hotel with so many square feet of room, desk, etc. That's the largest segment. Maybe, but the opportunity for a young brand lies in niches. And I can tell you, for us as Dilmah, when we enter a new territory, we simply can't afford to enter the mass in many cases. And so we target a specific niche. It might be an organic segment. It might be a designer segment. It might be something very different. So let's keep moving. What we have beyond what we already do is the reason why I was so interested in sharing thoughts with you. When you look around Sri Lanka, you have a series of opportunities that are perfectly aligned with the 21st century consumer. Sorry for the inclusion of arak, but I can tell you in Jaffna, there is a Palmyra arak that is very unique. It's unique in taste, it's unique in the way it's manufactured, and it maps perfectly on what the consumer wants. I have put down some words of what the consumer desires. Authenticity, provenance as in terms of the heritage. Wellness, maybe not the arak, but certainly the others. Quality in every sense. Quality is non-negotiable. Sustainability, ethics, handmade. Sri Lanka has an abundance of handmade produce, pure. So whether it is the murunga leaves or whether it is the experiences that we can offer on the rural experiences, we don't need to set up a brand that focuses on a beach experience. Yes, that is the biggest, and yes, maybe most tourists come for the beach. But today, we have an opportunity also to say that we specialize in the niche. We specialize in rural Sri Lanka. And you have a few properties. You have, Jeff Wing has a property in Kaduruketa. You have lots of little boutique properties that are specialized on specific experiences that are fundamentally different. And I think that is the point about branding, to build that uniqueness around difference, staying away from the mainstream. The mass is great, but the mass is also competitive. The mass is also difficult to add value to. So to compete in the mass, typically you have to work on price. But branding should be about adding value and looking to something different. So whether it is inviting people to come and see how we make traditional drums, or inviting people to come and experience traditional Sri Lankan spices, or in fact packaging those spices and selling them, branding is absolutely key to unlocking value. Because without branding, you can see what has happened to Sri Lankan cinema. Our cinema is undoubtedly the finest in the world. We have research reports that confirm that the health benefits, the impact of the beneficial impact on type 2 diabetes, etc., is fantastic. Yet we have to compete in the market against Cassia on price. Why? Because we have not built the identity and we have not engaged the consumer. It's one thing to say that Ceylon cinnamon is the finest and to hang back. You can even communicate, but if you don't find the consumer touch points, which in this case is the chefs, the bartenders, is the people who are using it to create an experience, then we have a problem. Then the brand is not engaging with the consumer, and that's an issue. So I built a few points on how we can grow a brand. Most important thing, start small. I say that because in our experience, starting big, and we still start small in some territories. In some territories, they have no clue about the Dilmah brand. In others, they know about us. So looking at Australia, comparing Australia to Austria as an example. In Austria, we have zero brand equity, or we have small brand equity amongst in the hospitality channel. So we are a new brand. And what we do is we always say, look, we have to start sustainably. You can never compromise your brand principles. So all the elements we discussed a short while ago, you can never compromise. And therefore, you must start small, because the cost of going into retail is high. Why? Because you have to pay listing fees. You have to perform within 6 months. If you don't, you'll be kicked out. You have to deliver a promotional program that may be unsustainable. So cost-wise, it is completely unsustainable. It's not a good plan to enter a market unless you have a big budget, and that may be the case. If you have a big budget, absolutely, then maybe this discussion is not so relevant to you. Second point is possibly the heart, the core of what of branding today. It's about relevance. When I say relevance, what was relevant 10 years ago, you can see in the chart, maybe if you remember the chart that I showed a short while ago about how the change in brand growth and brands, those brands are not so relevant anymore. You don't see IBM, you don't see Kodak, obviously. And so what is relevant today are the smaller brands that offer a proposition that a consumer enjoys. So what a consumer enjoys is what they desire. They want convenience, they want quality, they want provenance, they want a reflection of their self-image, they want sustainability, they want environmental impact. They want a brand to be a cause. And so consumers today are, in that sense, much more tribal. And this is why I talked about a niche, because you can go into a niche and you can engage with that niche to a level where you can be something absolutely amazing. So if it is a health and wellness niche, or it's an organic community, that community could potentially, if you design your brand right, see you as a fantastic cause. It could be that you set up beach cleaning to pick up plastic because they care about plastic. And of course, it's a good thing. Every brand should do good. I mean, at this point, I think that it is not negotiable that a brand should not do good. Every brand has to do good. The big brands are, in some cases, pretending to do good. In some cases, genuinely, sincerely wanting to do good. But for a new brand, relevance involves doing good and being a cause that the consumer will engage with. And if you get that right and get that planning aspect right, and you engage with the consumer as a cause, you can be sure that their loyalty will be unprecedented, because today loyalty comes at a premium. We talked about 40% of consumers standing at the aisle and saying, hey, which tea, which coffee, which cinnamon shall I buy today? That's a problem for established brands, but it's an opportunity for new brands. But a new brand that is also a cause, you don't have to worry about it, because you have engaged with the consumer to such an extent that you don't have to concern yourself with attrition. Building an experience, important. We talked about cinnamon. With cinnamon, I can look at a product as a consumer and I can see, yes, it's a product. So what? I'm in a supermarket with 40,000 SKUs. So a new one has come. It has nothing to do with me. So how you build an experience and build your relevance to the consumer is by making sure that across multiple touch points they see you. It could be in that beach cleanup. It could be in the cafe. It could be by engaging with the chef and the chef sending a social media post out saying, wow, I tried this new cinnamon from Sri Lanka. It's awesome. It blew my mind. It might be a consumer test that you do. It might be a challenge that you put out to a bartender saying, to a group of bartenders saying, design a cocktail around my cinnamon and let me put it out on Mother's Day as a tribute to mothers. That's building relevance and building an experience. And so activating that in the chosen channel, yes, if it's hospitality, easier. If it's retail, expensive. I think, yeah, that's a complex area, so we'll maybe leave it for another day. Important point here also is about impact. Too often, brands do things that they don't measure. No, measuring is not expensive. 20 years ago, it was very expensive because you had to go to surveys and so on. Today, you can measure digital impact or return on investment very easily. You have your cost per contact established for you. You simply have to log into your admin dashboards and you find it. You have analytics offered by multiple vendors at a relatively small cost. But please measure impact. Why is it important to measure impact? If you're engaging with a chef and if you're paying the chef $1,000 a week to say something, and if that $1,000 a week is not generating $10,000, you need to find another chef or find a bartender or move on. Please, for heaven's sake, look at impact. There are too many brands that are spending out of tradition simply because, yes, we did television. But TV, it's changing. There's satellite now. There's all of these others, but TV. So sometimes the marketing campaigns that I have seen satisfy the marketing director or the marketing manager, but absolutely do not satisfy the consumer. You must analyze impact. So that's important. And there's a lot of tools to be able to do that. Television, maybe not, but digitally, yes. And the fact is, on digital, you can reach a whole lot more consumers today than traditionally. And of course, with measuring impact, refine and keep improving your marketing mix. Technology, huge enabler. So I'm going to move on. Yes, technology and social media. What it enables is not just reach. It enables low-cost reach. It also enables enhanced customer service. And the important point is in Sri Lanka, you have some of the best tech companies in the world operating here, either as back-end or in some cases as branded operations, but they have the capability. So you can build your chat box, you can build your digital humans for customer service. You can build your analytics. You can build your website and your e-commerce offering. And why that is important is that, and here's an example. Actually, this was a really interesting example from near Boston. It's a company called Tracksmith. It's a running brand. You know how sports brands, they are high budget, huge brands in most cases. This company doubled its social media reach in the last 10 months, that is as of 2019, with $5,000 in ad spend. And it has netted 4.1 million investment from an investment company from Pentland. And so that sort of shows that you don't need to be looking at the millions that we needed to in the era of television. You can still engage. Of course, you need to have your other aspects aligned. You need to have your proper product, your planning, your engagement features, and your trust. You can't just spend $5,000 in isolation and expect that it delivers the expected return. Digital commerce, I don't need to tell you, the trend is very, very clear. And what is happening is that COVID has simply intensified this. I haven't got the data for COVID, but I can tell you that in the last few weeks, we are seeing upwards of 50% increase in online sales. But the question is, will that continue once lockdown is suspended in many areas? So the consumer ultimately is who determines your brand value. Multiple different aspects. Climate change is worrying them. Sustainability is worrying them. And that concerns you because they are looking for relevance. They will support brands that are relevant to their lives. And whatever is relevant to their lives, climate change, sustainability, the volatile environment relating to their personal safety, etc. Whatever brand fulfills that relevance is the brand that will get their dollars, rupees, or whatever. Now, the challenge that we have now is that, at least from a Deloitte study a few weeks ago, it's that all of these are converging. They're all converging because the consumer today is more challenged. We have this volatile, unpredictable, chaotic environment upon us. Earlier, it was something, a few weeks ago, it's something we talked about in presentations, but something we have never experienced. But it is here. And with the convergence, we must expect that the next 10 years are going to be turbulent. They are going to be uncertain, complex, as this research shares. But in that volatility, there is opportunity. So don't be afraid of volatility, because volatility is disruptive to the status quo. It means that brands with commitment and all of those other aspects that we talked about, that those brands will emerge stronger from this volatility. So it is an opportunity as much as it is a threat. With the right tools, it will be an opportunity. So here are some, getting back to more mundane things, and I think often people say, look, how do you handle that brand building aspect? Well, it could be a pop-up, which could cost you $500 to have a pop-up with your product on a prime shopping day, whether it's a Thursday evening or a Saturday morning, depending on the shopping habits in those particular territories that you're looking at. It could be brand communities online. It doesn't cost you much more than time. It could be events where you bring in your bartender and have your, you go to a lobby of a hotel or a mall or something, and you do your cinnamon mix or your moringa leaf salad or whatever it is. Digital, we talked about digital. It could be experiential in-store. Multitude of different options. But the important thing is they're very different to what we had 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had promotions in store. We had promotions in hospitality. Today, you have an abundance of different options because most of these were simply too expensive for any of us, any brand to afford. Now, it's not so. So I think the point also, we talked about long tail and niche. The point also is that the consumer is fragmented. You know, we used to talk about the young consumer as being the next consumer. Today, today grocery spend is dominated. The majority of grocery spend is by Gen Z and millennials. So you can see here the differences between the baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Z. And the important point behind all of this is that Gen Z and millennials are more concerned than ever about the issues we talked about. Those are issues that map directly onto Sri Lanka. We have the provenance, we have the authenticity, we have the ethics, we have the sustainability, we have a very biologically diverse country. And as a brand, if we engage with these factors, we make sure that our brand builds on benefiting the environment and so on, that we become automatically relevant. And so in Sri Lanka, it's much easier than in many other territories. And hence my reference to brands as a cause. And causes are something people feel strongly about. They come out and they demonstrate about all sorts of things. If the brand can align with those causes in a sincere way, because if you're not sincere, if you don't really care about it, there's no sense in talking about it because it will only be a quick social media or a digital search and you'll be found out. So you've got to find out what you care about and align it with what consumers care about. Green pressure, huge. Burnouts, wellness is a big deal. Meaningful connections because people are losing that social contact and are looking for greater connection. So this is an example of how we have done it. So, you know, as our brand, we stand for three things. Taste, because great taste is the reason why anybody would want tea in the first place. Goodness, wellness, because natural goodness, and tea has antioxidants. So behind each of these, you have a multitude of materials. So talking about goodness, there are books that we have produced in collaboration with scientists that show the antioxidant benefits in tea that demonstrated. There are engagement with the media, engagement on social media, websites. There is a school of tea that has trained over 5,000 different people. All of this is needed to validate the claim. So these are not just empty claims. They are claims behind which you have a lot of substance. I'll show you that in a minute. And finally, purpose. Purpose because my father built Dilmah as a business that is a matter of human service. And with that, there are certain ethical outcomes which actually started in the 80s, long before purpose became fashionable. And this is the brand ecosystem. So you can see at the bottom there, some of the experiential elements, whether it's a tea lounge or tea radio, our real high tea challenges, working with chefs around the world, our seasonal teas, but also you see advocacy, working with biodiversity, working in promoting causes that we believe in, which actually engage very strongly with consumers, but equally with ethics. And again, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. But also, if you look at tea and health, we talk about goodness. It's not just talking about goodness. It's making sure that the science is set out clearly, shared, whether it is in videos, whether it is on our YouTube channel, social media, or in this publication, or several publications. But behind that also is the reality. Yes, 15% every year from our pre-tax profits, it goes directly to the foundation. It's audited, it's verified. It's raised almost 6 billion rupees in the past 15 odd years. And so these are all points that the consumer will check. They are communicated very nicely here, but behind them again lie a lot of digital assets, lie a lot of audits and transparency, because that's required. These are some of the projects that validate and which build that engagement to help consumers understand that, yes, as a tea brand, we are different. And so coming back to the main point and sort of coming close to the conclusion, looking at some of the top packaged food brands, they're not all heading up. There are quite a few heading down. So there is change. And in that change is opportunity. This is from the Financial Times. A wind of change is from the UK Financial Times. A wind of change ripping through consumer industries. Consumers, that is millennials in this case, want committed brands with authentic products. Natural, simpler, more local. In this case, internationally, more local doesn't work in our benefit. But in Sri Lanka, we have products that cannot be produced in Europe, Australia, and so on. So that's not as relevant. If possible, small, as small as you can. And so 20 years ago, big companies were revered. It was always the IBMs, it was the Hertz, it was GM, and so on. But today, it's about small. And that's why Tesla has disrupted the automobile industry. Who would have thought that the automobile industry, with their billions of people, the vested interest, the political clout, that it could be disrupted by this one guy? Here are some examples of crazy innovation. Now, this Change Please, it's an initiative. It's a fantastic promotion where this company, really a tiny British company, has produced toilet roll, selling one 36-roll package of toilet paper for 24 pounds. I mean, that's more than double what typically it should cost. Actually, it's almost triple what it typically should cost. But what have they done? They have linked with a cause. And so the product is successful. This is from Trend Watching. Here are some examples. The consumer is changing. And so Coldplay, I don't know if you like Coldplay, a fantastic brand, they refused to have a tour. Typically, when a new album is launched, they tour the world. This time they said no, because of the environmental impact. This was pre-COVID, that they are not going to tour the world as they normally do. They ran 3 concerts on YouTube, 2 or 3, 30 minutes each. They got 15 million views. They actually gained by canceling the tour. They got more people to watch their music and build their brand than they would have if they went live. KLM, encouraging customers to fly less, fly lighter. IKEA, in this store, it's in Belgium, they shut down the car park and they planted 160 trees. Everything is changing. And I think that is the key, because your ability to brand is restricted only by your imagination. You can see some of these crazy things that people do. Patagonia, amazing, really wonderful brand. They ran an ad, don't buy this jacket. That's their Patagonia jacket. What did they say? Reduce, repair, reuse, recycle. They built customer engagement. They built a cause. They followed a cause. And this is something that the owner of Patagonia, he still fronts his advertisements like my father does. He believes in. And you can see that he's sincere about it, because this is the kind of things that he says. And of course, it's a very smart commercial move as well, but it's something that is sincere. So I put 5 things to think about. Planning around your passion. Why? Because a brand needs commitment. Design brand relevance, because consumers demand it. Design, the brand image, design, I didn't have time to touch too much on design, but design is very much a part of the intellectual property. Why? Because if you look at shopper marketing, when a customer stands on the shelf, the combination of colors that have been used, the font size, all of these factors, the design forms a big reason why a customer might even reach for your product and pick it up. So your communication, all of these are very critical to possible success at shelf. Define brand value. And I'm not talking about brand value in the conventional sense. I mean social value, social capital, environmental, and consumer, and of course, finally, commercial. So what is the value of your brand to the consumer? Engage your team, because it's amazing what your team, even whether it's 5 or 500 people, it's amazing what they could do by actually using their social media, by talking about your brand. So please make sure that you engage your team. It could be 2 people, but some of the ice cream brand I mentioned, it's just 2 people who are brand evangelists because they love and believe in their brand so much. Live the brand, because you have to earn the trust. So you need to be sincere. You can't talk about animal being fair to animals and caring for animals, and then be found in a contrary situation that will be exposed very quickly. Express the brand in every sphere, because consumers today see brands very differently. It's not something that is in the supermarket or in hospitality. It is a brand that must be a part of their life. So as much as consumers are willing to promote brands as a cause, they also expect brands to engage with them across multiple different touch points. So express the brand, whether it is on conventional advertising, whether it is in being a part of a marathon or whatever event. And so there's so many different ways which will be relevant to your particular product and your category. Collaboration. I think collaboration is one of the opportunities we have in Sri Lanka, because in Sri Lanka you have the companies that have the digital knowledge, the digital capability. You have scientists, you have incredible knowledge in universities, you have environmentalists, you have all of these different groups which often don't talk to each other. Now, if as a brand, you can bring together the groups that are relevant to your product and to your category, then you have great potential, because they will validate, they will help you to refine your thoughts and your ideas, they will help you to build your tools and to communicate. Because ultimately, in the old days, I think 1 or 2 people could build a brand, but today it takes a lot of people like-minded, because you need different skills, because the complexity is so changed. So today we will have a customer who will come and tell us, look, give us the antioxidant content in this, how many leaves in this, etc. A lot of, there might be questions on different aspects of our product, which we need to build our knowledge on to be able to project the sincerity, or to have the knowledge to validate everything that we've been saying. And sell to the customer direct. The retailer is going to tell you, I want cheap price. The cafe is going to tell you, I want cheap price. Or going to say, look, I can get cinnamon cheaper from China. But it's only direct that you can engage with the consumer. Now you have seen that the consumer desires provenance, authenticity, quality, purity, etc. that your brand can offer, because Sri Lanka offers a lot of that. And so connecting with the consumer direct is critically important. We've seen what's happening in e-commerce. Change, because every consumer changes. I showed you the difference between the baby boomer generation, Gen Z, and now the subsequent generation. Always changing. And so today, you might link up with a cause that could be expressed in certain ethics or sustainability, but you might have to involve a music band. You need to adapt and change. We need to go where our consumer is. And finally, never give up. I think with that, I went way over my time. Sorry for that. Thank you for listening, and good luck in your branding story.
Thank you, Dilhan, for that amazing story. Your ability to brand blocked only by your imagination. I picked up from your presentation. Yeah, we are going beyond of our time, but still that we haven't lost much of the participants. So there are a couple of questions also came from the participants. So I would like to get a few more minutes from you, if it is okay with you, Dilhan.
Sure.
Yeah, the one question I want to ask you is this: as the Sri Lanka Export Development Board, that we are always trying to promote brands, the brands, to develop brands for our clients. But then again, we always hear that how difficult it is to develop a brand, as you have mentioned, and you have explained that it is really a tricky thing. How do you compare the selling to the global brands and to have their own brand? Because the issue is that very recently I heard a story that the big company who went with their product and nobody bought it outside Sri Lanka. So they were very they faced a big problem. But then they found a brand which is selling this product all over the world, and they sold to that brand, and then they found the exact product is selling like hotcakes. So how do you tackle this kind of situation? Whether to have the own brand or to sell to some other brand? It's a very easy thing as it's a face value.
Someone own brand or private label is easy, but the problem is that it comes at a unacceptable cost in terms of insecurity. Because if you look at Sri Lanka's coconut water industry, for example, we produce very good coconut water, which we supply under private label. Most of that, the private label owners, these American companies, I'm sure you know the names, have now switched their source of supply to Thailand, to other lower cost producers. So you can be sure if you do a private label product, you will be replaced the minute somebody with a lower cost comes along. And in Sri Lanka, we simply can't afford, because of our land mass, because of our labor, energy costs, etc. We simply can't afford to try to be the cheapest, because at a certain point, there's no sense. Because if you're not generating profit that will help you to invest in getting more machinery, building your brand, then there's really no sense in making all the effort. You're going to make the effort on the packaging, on the technology, etc. Because the private label owner is going to give you a hard time to make sure their product is good. You're going to have to get product liability insurance and all of this. But ultimately, you could lose your business just like this. So my suggestion is, yes, it's a necessary evil. You might have to do it. And in the garment industry, we've done it. But we have built up huge expertise. Now let's do as some of the garment players have done. But let's focus much more on our Sri Lankan own brand, because nobody can take that away from us.
Okay, I am with you in that answer. I don't know whether you would like to answer this question from one of the participants. He's asking kind of your brand value kind of thing. What is the total global annual turnover of Dilmah Tea, please? You can take it or leave it.
Well, you see, the global turnover is very hard to calculate because of the different currencies involved, and of course now they're all, not in great shape. But I would expect, when you talk about turnover, it would be in terms of the final consumer value would be upwards of $500-600 million. But the point is, it's not, when you focus on the value, you focus on the bigger retailers. In many cases, that is beyond our capability. So our focus has always been on the niche, because the niche is what is growing. And when you look at the larger retailers, so if for example, we were going to try to get into Walmart, two things would happen. One is, if we go to the US, we would lose control of our product. We would have to go with penetrative pricing. The volumes would be fantastic. We'll have amazing value. But is that consistent with the elements of our brand? And 15 years ago, we were in Walmart, but we self-deleted simply because we decided that that was not a price that we were willing to pay. So we decided, no, we have to stay focused on quality. We cannot compromise on price. Our quality is Ceylon tea is our cost that we can't compete in Walmart. And so we pulled out. So you have to take those tough decisions. But please don't focus too much on value alone, because value will come naturally once you get your product, your brand right, and go for the quality.
Okay, Dilhan, there's one more question. How challenging the global intellectual property framework for an upcoming brand, kind of? How alert the upcoming brand regarding this intellectual property framework? Is it friendly, or is it very tough, or is it you have to invest much more on those things?
I think it's friendly. It's friendly, but it's expensive, Saman, in the sense that, but I mean, there's a person, Merle Don, who has also shared a question. I have the same answer. So what Merle says is, can you build your brand when the cost is a big driver for decision making? My response is, scale your brand ambitions and your objectives to your resources. In this case, I mean, when we started, we registered Dilmah in 2 or 3 different countries. Gradually, we grew and we built, and today we can't afford to register some of our concepts in some territories because it's crazy expensive. So please define the area that you want to target, which should be connected with your resources, whether it is financial, intellectual property, etc., and then target that. And once you do that, take it step by step.
Yeah. Several questions are there, but those are very specific to certain product areas. To mention the product areas like handmade artisan teas, coir fiber, chai tea, those things are the kind of some of the specific products that some of the participants wants to kind of focus at. Would you have any couple of?
Yes, no, of course. I have all time. I'd be happy to help anyone that I can in this conversation. But where chai is concerned, absolutely, it is. When you really look at, when you break down the product, it is the milk in the chai that people enjoy. It's like cappuccino. People love cappuccino. It has become so popular because people enjoy the milk. Chai, additionally, the combination of spices allows us to build a uniquely Sri Lankan chai. It allows us to build chai specific to certain markets. So if you go, for example, to Czech Republic, there is a sensitivity to chili. You would not present a typical Sri Lankan chai. You might go more in the direction of turmeric and moringa and so on. But you go right next door, Hungary, they have chili pepper as part of their diet. Very different. So there are there's lots of local differences in consumer preference. You need to be very careful on what you launch where, but it's as simple as going out, talking to a few people. We don't always go with the big market research. And I'll be quite honest, we can't afford it. So we might have a small tasting panel, invite 10 people across, taste a product and say, what do you think? Get a few pointers, research it again, refine it, and then go with gut feel. So yeah, you can never research everything perfectly, but absolutely, where chai is concerned, opportunity. Where coir fiber, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the category, but I do know that in terms of its usage, there are many applications. But the key thing is to reimagine, because at the moment everything is changing, and I showed you some examples of how brands are completely reinventing their consumer proposition. So in this sense, my suggestion is whatever category you look to, please look to your uniqueness and your point of difference, because it's only by doing that you're going to build a brand that has long-term sustainability. In our case, we have said, look, we are uncompromisingly taste, goodness, purpose. And there is, when I talk about uncompromising, it means that very often we forego opportunities. So we have customers who come to us and say, if you can give me this price, if you can mix a little Vietnamese tea, we say, no, absolutely not. But we do have an offer. We say, look, we have a brand, Melton brand or different brand, and we give that. But that's not a strategic product. So you might want to pursue that. You have your second and your tertiary brand. But for heaven's sake, please be uncompromising and know that in doing so, that you will also have to lose a lot of opportunities. Like in our case, we were doing 4 or 5 containers a month into Walmart in the US, going back many years. we decided to forego that business because we didn't see that it was compatible with our long-term strategy.
Yeah, I'm not going to tire you so much. This question, I think I can answer a little bit. How long Dilmah took to build the brand? Initially, I knew that from 1974 onwards that your company is trying to build the brand or something like that. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, Dilmah, it took almost 38 years for my father to overcome the problems at the time. Of course, we were post-colonial economy and it was still economic colonialism. But Dilmah was launched in 1988. It's taken us 32 years, but I will never say that we have achieved it because every single day is an uphill battle. So I would say that I can't say that we have built the brand in the past tense. We are building the brand and we will continue to do it for the simple reason that we had to realign the brand every 10 years, going back 15, 20 years. Today, you have to realign your brand at least every 2 years in terms of its packaging, in terms of its communication style, in terms of the wording that you use, and so on. So, consumer is changing much faster than before. It's unfortunately, it's a reality.
Okay, with that note, I think we will take this, we'll conclude the webinar from here. I know there are a couple of questions that they are not very much relevant to the brand building, so that we have skipped those, but you can always be engaged with Mr. Dilhan Fernando. I think he's a open personality. So thank you so much, Mr. Dilhan Fernando, for your time and for insights and for your interesting webinar presentation.
I hope it helped. Stay safe. And, I hope I'll meet you.
And even though it is late, little bit more than 20 minutes or so, we have almost 3/4 of the participants are with us, so that it shows that it's an interesting conversation. So, Dilhan, you also keep safe, and we'll have a chat again later on.
Thank you.
We'll conclude from here.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you. Stay strong.
Everybody, yeah.